I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is two of our own, Jack Pierce and Ray Willis, and Jack is a graduate of the old Douglas High School, and he was captain of the Douglas High School football team in 1947.
State champions at that time.
State champions, really? Yeah? Okay. And I just found out this morning Jack's worked at Eastman for 38 years. And he started as a janitor and ended up as a foreman with 27 people working for him. So I think that's wonderful and shows some progress anyway, Jack. And Ray Willis is a graduate of Dobbins-Bennett High School, and he has been in the elementary education business for Sullivan County and ended up the principal at Gravely Elementary School. Is it elementary? Yeah. And if they want to tell you anything else about themselves, they're welcome to do that. And we're happy to have Jack's family here today with us, 2 daughters and his wife, I believe.
So I've known Jack. He and I worked in Habitat for 25 years. We were on the same selection committee, and we go out. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. So we would go out and visit all the people. There were about 10 of us on that selection committee. How many of you are pretty familiar with Habitat, hosting Habitat? Look at that, Jack, the hands, about everybody. Well, we've got about 270 some houses we built. Kingsport's built, I think, 160 or 70. Our church has built, First Baptist has built 22 houses. And Jack's church, Shiloh at that time, he goes to Central Baptist now, helped us with 12 of those buildings. They would help us and we'd work, and we've learned so much and had so much relations with Jack. And how many in here know Jack Pierce? Raise your hands. Look at that, Jack. See, Jack's his personality and everything. Good. Yeah, that's great. It's good to see you. But anyway, there's so much stuff, and we've just got so much time. When he was dating, raise your hand, Betsy. Okay. Does anyone know where she was born? You do, Nancy. I told you. Tell them. Dant, Virginia. Okay. Now, Jack is going to tell you lots of good stories about his life as a black man in a community, jobs, housing. Okay. Dant, Virginia. Very small coal mining over in Virginia. So she grew up there. Now, the high schools just went to about the 8th grade, and so she came to live with, get Virginia's picture there, Sally, and hold it up. Okay, that's Jack's sister. She died 2 or 3 years ago, and she was named after Virginia Pierce. Now that was Jerome Pierce's only daughter, and he had 3 sons, and Albert was Jack's father. And Bill, you knew him, didn't you? Jack's father had the similar personality and high quotient, social quotient, and personality and everything. And he had 18 horses. And you know who he worked for? Was William Roller. Have y'all heard of William Roller? Bob Roller, Bill Roller. Well, he owned Richfield's, and Charlie Edwards got it from loans at 1,300 acres, and then Jack knew them, and his father worked a lot for him. Jack's father, Albert, helped at the First Baptist Church 100 years ago. He had 18 horses, and his daddy and granddaddy, they all worked with horses. They learned from the Pierce family, because that's where Jack's grandfather left in 1863. It's all in this little book up here. I wrote 2006. It's got 10 pages, and afterwards you can look down at 1, 2, 3, go down to 9 and look at it, at the things there though. But anyway, Jack, to date, Betsy, he had to go on the train at the old Presbyterian church. It'd stop there. They moved it up kind of on the highway, Kingsport Presbyterian. And there's where he was treated by Molly Cloud, and she was kind of in charge of the church. And Jack's going to talk about new Kingsport and old Kingsport. That was his boyhood upraising there. So, Jack, come up here and talk to us. Oh, don't do like I did and hold it way away. Hold it up, because all these people you want to hear, Jack, don't you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Jack.
Okay.
Good.
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning. I want to speak to you this morning about my life, old Kingsport to new Kingsport, and then a little bit about Tennessee Eastman. I was born in old Kingsport there was 13 children. And my mother died, I was 3 years old. And I've heard my dad say at this burial of my mother, his brother was pretty well off and we were pretty poor. And they was wanting to take some of us kids. I think the way they're gonna do it is like you would pick little pigs. I don't know whether fell or ribs or not, but anyway, my dad said, I'm gonna take the kids back home. So we was raised back next to the North Fork River. My dad was a farmer and a blacksmith. He had a contract to shoe horses for the pet dairy company. He would shoot the farmer's horses, he got 25 cents a foot. And if he'd shoe horses for the pet dairy company, he got 50 cents a foot. Actually, at that time, that was pretty fair money, because most of the people that worked on farm was making $1 a day. And my dad would shoe a horse, he was getting 25 cents a foot for a plow horse, and he would get 50 cents a foot for the pet dairy horses. So if he would shoe a pet dairy horse, he made more money than the people working on the farm. He made more showing one horse than some of the people working on the farm made in 2 days. So we lived pretty well, and I didn't know at that time segregation, integration, and all that. Everybody there, we all the same, we was all poor. So I guess I would say that was some of the best days of my life. And the old Kingsport Presbyterian Church, does anyone here know about that? That church was always open to black or white. If someone died in a neighborhood, you could have your family at the old Kingsport Presbyterian Church. As a matter of fact, we did have several funerals there. The old Kingsport Presbyterian Cemetery, you could bury black folks in that cemetery. So actually during those times, our life was pretty well satisfaction. Well, when the trouble started, to New Kingsport. When I started school and coming to New Kingsport, I didn't know about the water fountains and housing and how things worked here, but I soon found out. I found out you couldn't drink out of water fountain. Then I found out going to Douglas School that practically everything we had in Douglas School was used sent down from Don Bennett School. Our books, our desk, and also in the woodwork shop we had used lumber. So we actually Douglas School was all we had, but that's where all the black folks went. As far as in Gate City, Virginia, at that time the students from Virginia came to Douglas School because as far as kids could go was 8th grade in Virginia. And Virginia paid Tennessee for their kids to come to Tennessee. So all those years I went to Douglas School and I played football. So we had a pretty fair football team, although we didn't have many players. And then we got a lot of used equipment from Dalvin Benning. For instance, I had a helmet. There must have been some big-headed guy at DB because it was leather and it was big helmet. So I took it to the shoe shop, had a piece cut out of the back, put it on, it was pointed. I said if you wear it today, that'd get you suspended. So anyway, in those days, I went to Douglas School and we won a state championship in 1947. We played Chattanooga Central, and it was about as big as DB. So as we went to Chattanooga to play, we borrowed a bus, pretty raggedy bus, but anyway, it got us to Chattanooga. And we were standing at the end of the field that day after we got off the bus. And some of the Chattanooga players, they come around and they saw us. And they said, boy, if we knew the circus in town, we'd stayed out of school. That's just about the way we looked. But they lived to regret it that day. We went on and I guess that helped us expire us because we beat them 7-6. And we went on and beat Knoxville for the state championship that year. So that was pretty well in our school days. And after graduation, I married Miss Betsy. And jobs were hard to find those days. I saw some things I never seen before. I saw people living in shacks. I saw people living in houses with dirt floor. That was in Kingsport. And I didn't know how well off we was in the country because I'd never seen anything like that. And we had, food was something we had plenty of, jellies and jams and hams and all that stuff. But the kids in Kingsport, they were lucky to have a slice of bologna for lunch. And anyway, that was, as we went on and I graduated and tried to find jobs. Jobs was hard to find. I worked a little bit at W.B. Green's Hardware. I worked a little bit of construction. And on last, I finally got a job at Tennessee Eastman. Boy, I said, working at Tennessee Eastman, anybody that worked at Eastman at that time, that was a real good job. But boy, I was in for it. Once I got to Eastman as a janitor, everybody at Eastman was janitors, cooks, or maids. All blacks at that time, that's the jobs at Eastman. So as a janitor, I worked at Eastman. And after a while working, we had a foreman. He had third grade education. Then we had some employees that worked with me. They were school teachers in Hawkins County, but they made more money at Eastman. They could teaching in Hawkins County. So this third grade foreman, it didn't go over too good with men of education. But that's the way it was, and he had authority. He could fire you. He didn't have to go anywhere, supervision. If things went wrong, you lost your job. And I think at one time, as big as Eastman, there was more blacks fired than any department at Eastman. And a fellow asked me one time, saying, why don't we see more 40-year black employees? I said, because they got fired. So that's the way it was when I first went to Eastman. Then you had the water fountain problem. You couldn't drink out of water fountain. If I was working and I had to go far share maybe with some of those buildings, although I cleaned water fountains, I had to take water with me if I wanted to drink. Then you had large locker rooms, and you cleaned commodes 10, 12, but you couldn't use them. And that was some of the things that went on in Eastman. So one time they wanted a group leader. So they asked me, would I be a group leader? And I said, no, I don't want any parts of group leader. But after thinking it over, so many of my folks losing their job, I said, well, maybe. If I take group leader job, I can help someone. And so I went back and I called the supervisor and said, I'll come into your office and I'll take the job. What I did when I first took the job, every man that worked for me, I visited his house. I sat down with the man, I sat down with his wife, and I told him what was expected. I would tell him what we got to do because little stuff will cause you to lose your job. And so it worked pretty well. As long as I was group leader, there was just one man got fired. And so I worked that a while, and then I've got called to out in industry to work out in the plant. Didn't know a thing about plant work, didn't know a thing about operation, but I took that job and I studied and I worked and I studied trying to learn. I didn't know what a transmitter was. If you know, anybody's seen Eastman, you see all those pipes running here and you see them there. You got to know what's in them. Then you got to know where they're going and where they're coming from. I didn't know that, but anyway, I took a lot of work to learn that. So I worked quite a while as an operator, and then I was called into the office. Now what? What have I done? I was called in and said, how would I like to be a foreman? Well, I'd like to be foreman because I would make more money. So I made a shift foreman with 18 white employees and 1 black. So I thought that may be a problem, but for me it was no problem because I was raised with white folks. So far as working for me, that's just fine. So we got along fine, but we had just as many problems with those as I had with the black employees. I had some of them was good, some were bad, some I had to pay, some I had to get on, but it worked out pretty good. And so I worked at Eastman for 47 years. And then I retired and come home to sit with Miss Betsy. And that's where I'm at today. And I want to thank you for having me. And I hope I've enlightened you a little about the black man in Kingsport.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jack. It's been great for me to work with Jack, with through our churches, and just, and I was on the Bays Mountain Park Commission, and we were looking for some land around the park. You know, they're pretty bad about poaching our deer and things like that. Somebody that's older, you remember when they broke into the deer cage and killed one of the big male deers and got his head just for that or something. So Jack said, we were, like I say, we go and interview people all over the town and the countries around. Larry knows that. Larry, dog it, most of you know, he's had a pretty rough time, lost his wife a few weeks ago, but we've been friends for many years. Larry was one of our aldermen and city recorder and county court recorder. He was kind of the honcho for Mason-Dixon over data processing out there, and he helped the city a lot. But anyway, Jack said, Ray, we got some land out there on Bays Mountain that adjoins, there's 950 feet along the road of Bays Mountain Park, and it's mountain land. And boy, and he said, my grandfather bought that when he ran away in about 1863 and walked to Bristol and joined the Union Army. $10 a month. Couldn't read, couldn't write, didn't understand the money. See, he was not allowed to go to school or anything. Isn't that terrible? So they walked, there's 2 or 3 of them, and they walked to Roanoke, and they put him in a supply. So what he did, he would bring barrels of wheat and flour and bring equipment, no guns or ammunition or anything like that. That lasted. Jerome Garfield Pierce, that was Jack's older brother. That's where I got so much of my information there. And this is very good here. Let's see. Bree Ann, right, she's not here, is she? Oh, there you go. Great, Brianne. Gosh, okay, she had a doctor's appointment. I hope it came out all right, okay? So, Jack and I went down and talked to Berea Ann. She's been programs here many times. And Anna Ruth Coley wrote this book. Here's a picture of her. She and Jack, and she gave me about 15 or 20 typed pages. She did not like her grandfather. He was kind of male chauvinistic when it came to his granddaughters. So a lot of her sisters, they didn't like to go visit him. But when he came back from the army, he had to hide his blue coat. And so he came back, and in 1888, March the 7th, he bought this house. And it's still out there. Bud Nunley's picture's in up here. After this is over, if you want to come up, Brianne, hope you can come up and but Brianne, this belongs to the archives. She didn't trust me, so she put Kingsport Library on their archives. So, but she was very generous, and you can buy this. It says $15.95 from Amazon, right? So, did you have to pay $15.95 for it?
I don't remember.
Okay, all right. But Anna Ruth died 2 or 3 years ago. She grew up tough, and she gave me about 15 pages of her life, Jack, about how she grew up and some of the real hilarious things that they'd make pancakes when their mother would leave and go to town. See, and her school days were just so hilarious. Her uncle Samuel, I believe, he had the contract to take the students to Douglas High School. They were out there. They grew up. It tells us in there about the bond, school, and church. Now it's gone now, but it was gone. But it was out there where the Childerses. You know the Childerses there in the Sullivan area. Well, the black people and the white people would get together and have a reunion at the school, and that Fred and Frank Childers, a lot of you remember Fred, he was a magistrate in the county, and he and Jack and a bunch of the friends, they go out, and it was there when the black cemetery was had its dedication. I was there when they laid the brick for the thing and so on, but it's what they did. Fred Childers cried because he'd talk and say, we'd slip up there and take the pies that they had sitting in the window to cool, and they'd take them down to the creek, Horse Creek, or along in that area, and eat the pies and go swimming together. But they couldn't go to school together, see. And and they'd work for the Childerses, like Jack says, 50 cents to $1 a day or something like farming. But Fred cried because it was such a touching, emotional system there. But anyway, he came back and bought this house for $53 and about 200 acres of mountain land. And it went all the way up to the top, 950 feet, right along the road. And then several years later, the Baptist, I hate to keep talking about the Baptist, but it's all kind of good. We started the Baptist Retreat Center. There's 21 churches or something like that. I think there's 40 some in it now. But we bought it and started the retreat center. Boy, it's great for your children. And one of our members built a 48 place to sleep for the 24 on top, 24 on the bottom for the girls. And it's just a big success. My children all went there. And then the Baptists had some arguments, see. Dr. Bill, you know, probably church chaplain and one of those honor flights, 2 weeks ago or so, 3 to Washington. So they started arguing, and they voted, and they said, we're going to sell the Baptist Retreat Center. Gosh, I worked out there on the road burning the trees and the slash and things to get the road up in there. And we built a $250,000 place to eat, and big and good picnic tables and everything. Well, luckily God sent a big storm over in Johnson City. How many of you know of Buffalo Mountain over there? How many has been over? Yeah, a lot of you have. Well, it washed the Methodist camp away. So they bought the Baptist Retreat Center, and they paid $100,000 down, and they're going to finish paying for it $100,000 for the next 4 years. So they've owned it 2 or 3 years. So 60 acres of that top land that bordered the thing, because we worked with Tom Bowman and the Baptists when we got up to the park, then we had free work with, could use all the facilities up there. So that worked out great. But so you Methodists kind of remember us Baptists. You all have some good positive ideas. So that last 60 acres that we bought, there was 16 bonds that had to sign the deeds to that, to the Baptist Retreat Center. I read in the paper about a year or two ago, there was one more bond that said, hey, I should have signed it because I got some bond blood in me. See, so I don't know how that came out. Kathy, maybe you can research that for us sometimes.
Okay.
Good. So, Aunt Nan, she was a Hayes and a Vincent, and she married a Pierre or something, and he was the Vincents in that area owned her husband. See, is that something? You own a person, and but he lived in that house. He and Aunt Nancy, no kin to the Pierces, but Jack's grandfather had a great ability to get things done, and he bought that for $53 plus about almost 200 acres. Now we have bought all of Jack's grandfather's property, the Methodist and Bays Mountain Park. About 10 or 15 years ago, we worked, Betsy, you remember all this, that we worked for years, didn't we? Mayor, Board of Mayor and Alderman. Larry, I don't know whether you were in on that or not. This, yeah, but Dennis Phillips was just all for it, but no money. So we finally bought 28 acres, just old rough mountain land. You remember Mary Cunningham? Y'all remember Mary? Some of you do. But she was on the board of Mayor and Alderman years and years ago. She's dead now, but she was chairman of her board for up there for probably 12, 15 years. We'd slide all over those mountains trying to find property and stuff to buy for them. So we bought 28 acres. We paid $750 an acre. We had it appraised by Mike Stone. So then we wanted that other 40 acres around this house. There's maps up here that I've got out somewhere if you want to look at them and see them. But now, you know what? Brianne said at the archives, Jack and I went down there and talked to her, and I said, okay, here's this little booklet that I wrote. It's 9 pages, and then look, start out page 1 right here in front of Alex and go down through there, and at the end, it's the Baptist Retreat Center, because that's where Anna Ruth, she was a child. Her uncle or her granddaddy would drive a hearse, a hearse that they take dead people in. Well, he got an old hearse, and that was a school bus for all the children in that area. And he'd drive them in to Douglas School. And Jack said, it was really funny. He said, here comes a hearse with the students, so. See, we had a pretty hard time getting to school too. The city didn't have school buses for a long time. But anyway, that's part of the story of them. And there's so much that Mr. Kaiser, he was Jack's coach. He was a real smart man. Mr. Kaiser was Jack's teacher. And he taught him building construction. And Jack, you all probably don't know, out Williams Machine Shop out Holston Hills, on the right in there. Jack helped Mr. Kaiser build that. See, and let's see, right behind Douglas School, going towards Robert E. Lee School, there's a nice 2-story brick house there. Brick and buff brick and red brick kind of mixed together on the windows and chimney. And Mr. Kaiser lived there. And I live on Skyland Drive. My dad was a builder, so I became a builder also, a contractor, and I'd teach school. In the summer, I'd build a house or two and sell it and send my 4 children through college. Well, my dad said, now, Ray, they got some good, heavy concrete concrete blocks, 74 pounds each. I couldn't get anybody to lay those heavy block, and somebody told me about Mr. Kaiser. Yes, and he had gone to, I believe it's Morristown, Walter State or some college down there, wasn't it, Jack? Where Mr. Kaiser taught in college.
I don't recall, right.
Yeah, and so
Morristown College?
I don't know, it could have been Dr. Bill. But anyway, he was broken down with his knees, like many of you men and women also have that experience now. But he would take care of a lot of the boys, and he laid those blocks for me because they weighed 4 pounds more than the regular one. They put too much cement in them, so Mr. Kaiser he took a lot of the boys and tried to remake. I got to tell you this, he was their coach. And now, Jack, did you tell them about the cinders in the football field? The caretaker would take the cinders, they didn't have anywhere to put them, anybody to pick them up. They'd put them out on the small football field there at Douglas. And they get tackled, and after practice every day, their elbows would, Jack said, and on their legs, particularly their knees, they get tackled in the centers and everything, and it makes their elbows and their knees bloody. But they had one good back that was really fast. Well, all of them were good in tops, and they were out there in practice. But when he hit that line, he'd stop. A lot of backs do that, I guess, kind of, because they're stopping even the pros. They just a split second stop to look to see where the hole is and run through. But he'd run up there and be looking around too long. Mr. Kaiser had a big paddle, two-handed. See, now this was in the old days. See, you can't do any of that today. See, so and I always earlier when we paddled, one Archie McMillan in Church Hill told me at a principal's meeting one. He said, "Ray, just give one lick and get a small paddle, but really." And I had a little oak paddle about that wide, about that long, and you give them one real good lick, but make them grab their ankles. Well, here he called a play for him to go through there, and he was up there at the line, and he stopped, and he took that big paddle, and Jack said he hit him in the behind, said he ran through that line for 10 more yards. So, it's a good thing we don't have coaches like that, but that was life then, and it was part of Jack's upbringing, and that's why, with all the problems that they had, that it was really tough. The things that they had to go through with, the movies. Virginia, Jack's sister. Now, I think she was 83 when she died, and I talked to her several times. And she married, her first husband was College, and I met her son. He's a preacher here in town. And Virginia, Betsy, you went over and lived with her from an aunt, didn't you? Did you live with Virginia?
No.
Okay. Somebody, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Dan.
Dan, okay. So, but she would take some of these girls that lived in Gate City or something like that. They would stay there with some friends or someone like Virginia. Everyone loved Virginia. She was such a nice lady. I knocked on her door and says, "Virginia, I'm a friend of your brother's. I'd like to talk to you." She said, "I'll be back just in a moment." And Ella, your hair, your beautiful gray hair, hers was like that. She went back in there and put on a black wig and came back. So that was, oh, she was a lady. See, and they tell me, their children, I think she had a daughter or two that was a nurse down in Atlanta. And just like Anna Ruth, well, her picture's on the paper. Here's a picture of her and Jack. We go up and walk and talk in the park. She said, Ray, if I were living in Kingsport, I would be on the committee for Bays Mountain Park. See, because we didn't have any black people on there. See, of course, they have such a hard life, and it's hard for them, just like Jack said, when he worked for the Greens, W.B. Green, see, he'd work there with Mildred Davis. Does anyone in here know Mildred Davis? Yeah, of course you would. You went to church with her. Yeah. Mildred Davis was a reading teacher at Long Island. And I taught 3 years at Long Island with Mildred. When I became principal at Gravely, she was, we had first through the 8th grade, and when we consolidated, we had extra rooms. So the superintendent sent Mildred there. She had 45 hours beyond her master's degree in education and teaching slower children, Title I, Chapter 1, to read. And that's one of the best programs. It's got problems, but it takes money. They take aides out. And Mildred Davis was, well, no, she got me on the board of Habitat, first board. She got Jack on it. You knew they went to the same church. Did you all know Mildred Davis? She's great, wasn't she? Okay. But
she was also a music.
She's what?
She was also a music teacher. I went to school in Greenville, Tennessee, and a brother, and she come all the way to Greenville to teach music at George Clinton High School.
Oh, great. Gosh, that's great. His daughter played soccer with my daughter, and she was great. She lives in Chicago now, doesn't she?
You know, right outside.
Yeah.
Oak Park, right
Yeah.
outside Chicago.
That's good. Mildred played the piano at their church and Sunday school. She told me this. Let me see that time. Okay. Mildred said, Mr. Willis, you've got to go to Tuskegee College. So I went there several years after that, and it was all run down and everything. Had a nice little museum there in Montgomery, about 15 miles out. She said, Mr. Willis, I saw George Washington Carver. Now you all remember that from history books, Peanut Man. So she said, he's about 90 years old and he's over there pedaling around, Dr. Bill, in his garden. See, so you can pedal around in your garden. He lives down in Ridgefield, where C.P. Edwards used to have some of that 1,300 acres that he got from Jack's father's boss, because his father worked for Pet Dairy and Bill Roller, and with all the horses hauling the concrete. He would haul with his horses and his big feet, the mules and horses, Belgian horses. They could pull 30 bags of concrete to build the dam at Bays Mountain. And he hauled railroad ties, old ones were worn out, and they'd put those up for the footing, see, to reinforce it. Because gosh, we put everything iron in footings that we could find. So he would do that. He did that for the First Baptist Church and a lot of the buildings around everywhere. See? But there's so many interesting stories that we have. And, if you want to talk to Brianne Wright, now you know where the archives is, in the basement of the Kingsport Public Library. And she told us, she said, when we went down there, she said, now, I don't have enough history about the black history people in Kingsport. So right here is 4 of the very important blacks from Jerome Pierce. When he left and went up there to Roanoke, they had to kill a sheep or 2 of the farmers along the way. They didn't have any food. They had to live off their land when they went to fight for the Union Army. And he came back, and Ma was the only name that they knew for his mother. She was a cook there at the Pierces. So, Anna Ruth on the back of this, and there's a lot of Anna Ruth and Jack's pictures up here. She was a nurse in Washington. She retired at Fernandina Beach, just a little bit, 10 miles from Jacksonville. So she and her husband, he was the nicest man. The Bonds and the Pierces have a family reunion. You all been to a lot of them, haven't you? And you've eaten a lot of Orville's cooking. You learned to be a cook. That's Jack's cousin that's about 3 years older than Jack. Learned to be a cook at the Eastman, went into the Army for 22 years, got it. And Nancy, what does he do for you all, Orville?
He was their paper man in Fort Henry Arms and was great. I think that he has had to quit, and maybe some of his relatives are taking over, because you could always tell when he came in, there was a certain sound that he comes about 2:33 in the morning, and you hear a certain sound that he would make with his heavy shoes coming up. He always used the stairs in the building and stopped on every floor and delivered them. And you could ask any favor if you were going to be gone. You know, you told Orville. You didn't call the office, you told Orville. We miss him. He's easy to get along with. We love him to death.
Oh yeah, he's got that the wrong attitude from Virginia. His mother, and he's 90 years old, and he and Jack and a bunch of others. You ever been up that old spring years ago? Well, I took my family up there, and Barbara went up there, Kathy and Catherine, and we helped him clean out that spring. He had a hard time finding it. That's where they made a little bit of alcohol to kind of take care of them. In the old Baptist retreat center. A big rock and a spring came out there, so that, we helped clean it out. And we were there cleaning it out, and a little concrete slab about as long as this table. And it said, Orville Depew Bond, 1953. I'm pretty sure it's 1953 or 1957. So I got my grandchildren in there, and we cleaned all the mud and rock out, and it ran into another stream that went on off, see. But that's where it makes a little bit of moonshine sometimes. They'd use that water. But that's where Orville would have to go up to carry water. Now, they had 12 children. She did, see. So they had to carry a lot of water, probably about 1/4 of a mile down to their one room log cabin. She used hog hair to put in the clay, chinky, one room, a loft, 12 children. And I've got one picture here with, well, the picture of her is in our new house. Her son, oldest son, worked at Eastman as a cook, Oliver. And he brought in a truckload of lumber and built her new house about 1936. And she's at the front door over that house. All right, any questions? You want to ask Jack or anything?
Does
Okay,
Jack
one
tell,
over here. Jack, get up here.
does he tell how old he is, Ray?
What?
Do you tell how old you are?
Do I feel? I'm 86 years old.
Did the senders give you incentive not to get tackled?
The Sanders,
Did they give you an incentive not to get tackled?
well, you run pretty fast. But it was, we practiced in the Sanders, and after practice, when we would change clothes, take our clothes off, it was, you had to pull the blood on your arm, the blood on your arm, the blood on your knees. When you would take your clothes off, we would practice and was collecting those Sanders.
I believe they did that.
Jack, do you still have that helmet?
No, helmet. Another thing I want to mention to you about Eastman, about the cafeteria where we eat. All the cooks were black, but they couldn't eat in the cafeteria like out here. If we buy our food, we'd have to go through the line, get our food. We had 3 cafeterias. One of them you would have to go in a storage room to eat. The other one you had to go in the basement to eat. And one of them, a large cafeteria bigger than this room, they had a rope across. I'd go through and get my food, and you go get your food. You could sit here and eat. I had to go under the rope. That's the way we was treated at Eastman there for a while. Then we had a problem with dentists and doctors. I remember if you go to dentists, some days you couldn't go to after 5 o'clock. Then other dentists you had to sit in the storage room before they would wait on you. So that's the way it was at that time. And then another thing, black doctors. Do you ever understand why we don't have black doctors? We had black doctors at one time, but they didn't have a privilege to use Hosens Valley Hospital. So they left. So that's just some of the things that back then that we went through. And our teacher, anybody here of V.O. Dobbins? V.O. Dobbins, when school was out in summer, he had to do janitor work to make ends meet. That's the only job he could get in Kingsport, was to be a janitor at Kingsport Pierce. So that's just a little of the new Kingsport. So I think old Kingsport was better than new Kingsport.
Okay, gentlemen,
Let me say one more thing here. Veronica, about 64, went swimming, and she goes swimming in the pool there. The other girls will get out. And this really hurt Jack when you came home and told him the situation. So that's pretty tough. And Mildred Davis, now, you know, the teacher that saw George Washington Carver, she worked for Mr. W.B. Green also. And she ran the elevator up and down. And she would take in clothes. And when she was real young, her mother would wash them and iron them. She'd take a little red wagon and go up down Watauga Street delivering those clothes to the white people. See, but she was a chairman of the NAACP for years, and she was great in Habitat. But it's really, they've had pretty tough times sometimes. So, Brianne, this is some of the history that you can do. And Tim, thank you very much for doing that. We want to get a copy of that. Of course, you give Breanne a copy, don't you? Thank you.
Jack and Ray, we really appreciate your coming and sharing with us and bringing us up to date. Many of us didn't know. We knew you had problems, but didn't know they were as bad as they were, and I hope it's a little better now. And I want to be sure everybody feels welcome here. We're delighted to have everyone, and I hope that you'll come back. And I believe these gentlemen are going to be up here in case somebody has some questions.
Yeah.
Is that okay with you guys? Yes. All right, and thank you very much, gentlemen. Remember, we did not meet in December, and the next meeting will be in January 8th or something like that. Thank you so much for coming.